Well, we want to welcome you all to Conscious Community Gathering in March 7th, 2021. We are here. We are happy to see you, all of you. Um, what we do in Conscious Community is we are located in Pueblo, Colorado, of course, and we have a monthly gathering on various topics, wonderful speakers. We've been so blessed to have all the variety of speakers who've wanted to share about their passions, their joys, their learning. And it's a wonderful way for all of us to draw together in like mind. And so we're very pleased about that. What I'd like to do is just have us take some deep breaths together here. What we have learned over time is that even though we started out meeting in person and we love seeing each other and giving each other hugs and all of that, that we can still, of course, create community energetically no matter where we are. And this is becoming a very empowering experience for people. And we, of course, hope to meet again in person. But in the meantime, we can make community happen no matter what, as long as our hearts and our thoughts are connected. So let's just take some deep breaths together and maybe sit up straight, whatever's comfortable for you. And let's just breathe and draw our thoughts and our hearts together. Our intention to be even more conscious as we walk this journey, even more aware, and even more connected to not only our inner self, but all of the beautiful community and earth around us. It's actually very simple. Choosing the path of connection and of love and of light. And we are here. Thank you. So I want to share with you the upcoming gatherings that we're having, so you can put it on your calendar. In April, we have changed our time, our day, because typically we meet on the first Sunday of the month at 1:30, and because the first Sunday of April is Easter, we're making our meeting on April 11. So it's the second Sunday of April. Maral Sarper is our speaker, and she has just published her book, and we're excited to learn more about that. She says, when she was telling me, she said, get excited for an organically facilitated presentation and discussion about humanity's unique place in time and our opportunity to expand our concept of ourselves. And certainly that's what we're experiencing. So Morale, you can wave to folks. She's there. Hold up your book again. It's called
Hola.
It's called Cosmic. 7 Women Reveal the an Ultimate Truth. Yeah? So there's
That's correct.
And then on May 2nd, 3 weeks later, the first Sunday of May, we have Melinda Chichester, who was a part of the Colorado Springs and Pueblo community when she was here. Now she lives in Pennsylvania, but she's still a part of us. And this is the lovely thing about community, the way it's happening now. And Melinda's going to share her story, and her story, which we love, and it's very personal. We all learn from each other's stories, perhaps the most profound way of all. And her father passed away recently. She's a death doula, and being the companion of family members can be a real challenge when they're passing. So her title is called My Father, My Greatest Teacher. So we look forward to hearing her story on May 2nd. All right, any other thoughts or comments on that? Any questions before we go in? We're good. All right. So we are here. We are ready. We want to introduce our beloved Gregory Howell. Pueblo has embraced Gregory as he has embraced Pueblo. He is hard to define, but I would call him a creative, a visionary, a community builder, whether it's around the arts, architecture and history, education, or community development. However you want to look at Gregory, he's always on the cutting edge, right? And I say he's a marvelous wheeler dealer. He can connect money and people and projects in a way that few people can. And I also like to describe him as he's already in the fifth dimension. He gets things done. There's no such thing as a no. It can't be done with Gregory. So he's going to talk to us today about the next steps of his journey, as well as what is happening with this amazing project of Watertower Place in Pueblo, an old meatpacking plant that is being completely re-envisioned and redesigned, honoring the original architecture. So, without further ado, Gregory, we welcome you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you. I'm really honored to be able to follow up on what is an ongoing dialogue about this magical building that exists in Pueblo. I love that you mentioned the word no. And in fact, it's something that I've been working on for quite some time. And having lived in Japan for 10 years, one of my mottos is no is a hard yes. And that's a title of a book I'm working on, which basically means if you're given a no and your passion is driving what you're doing, just means you need to sit back, reflect, take a few breaths and reimagine other pathways to achieve that yes. So no is a hard yes. So thank you for reminding me of that. The other thing that I learned in Japan that really has been profound, and even more so just during the pandemic, is the importance of listening. I can talk on and on, as most of you know, if you've been with me. I love to share stories, but what I'm finding is just the capacity to listen. And sometimes it's really hard to listen because there's oftentimes a lot of noise. And when you're kind of in the throes of humanity, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I tend to enjoy the ugly, not so much the bad ugly, but the messiness of humanity, because that's where all the great stories are. So I'm going to share my screen. And just to give you a little bit of an introduction, when Marcia first asked me many months ago if I would follow up with an update, I was scheduled to be in Japan for the month of March, working with 2 museum groups. And I said, well, that's not a problem. I will make myself available live at a Zen garden in Kyoto, and we will enjoy the experience. So I'm actually going to start the presentation with a live video that was just shot at the Ryuanji Zen Rock Garden in Kyoto, and then we'll move into the presentation. So this is my gift to Marcia, and then at the end, we will enjoy a fabulous music video that was just shot on the top of Watertower Place by one of Pueblo's great musicians, Inea Lujan, previously of the Haunted Wind Chimes, who sings I Just Want to Love You on the rooftop of Watertower Place with a drone. And it's pretty incredible. So we'll end with that. But if anyone does have any questions, please don't hesitate, to raise your hand if you know how to do that, or just make some noise, bark, whatever it is. I would love to have questions. I really love that type of interaction. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I just want to make sure you can all see Cleansing Waters of Light, the story of Watertower Place at the confluence.
Yes.
And great, thank you. What I've done too is there are some things that I really want to revisit from our original presentation. And even if you didn't, listen to the first presentation a year ago, you'll still be able to follow along without any problem. But there were some things that were said and shared that have become real kind of beacons of light in terms of how we are moving through this project. So before we do that, let me just move to the next screen, and we will start in the Ryoanji, the Great Zen Rock Garden in Kyoto. And it's just a short 30 seconds. And for those of you that have visited or those of you who have not, there are 15 stones that are actually placed in this very sacred inner compound. And no matter where you stand, no matter where you sit in the entire area, you cannot see or count all 15. You have to change your perspective and viewpoint, but you can never see all 15 at one time. So it's pretty magical because I've gone since I was about 12 years old, and I still try to count all 15, but I never get to count all 15. So as you can see, even at the Zen Rock Garden, let me just get out of the video here real quick. It's not completely silent, and that's something you learn when you're in Japan. So now that we've had this Zen experience, one of the things that we do with the Rational Factory is try to shake up your mind. So the question that I asked a year ago was, what does the number 3 smell like? So these are just some of the wonderful things I learned as a child, actually, when I was working with Zen priests. But it's just a really great exercise, just like breathing, when you want to refresh your mind and really kind of shake up what expectations, and maybe there's certain things that you're a bit biased, and it's a great way to open up. What was amazing is when I posted this some year or two ago on Facebook, people were literally trying to tell me what the number 3 smelled like. And I was fascinated that some people approach this from so many different wonderful ways. So let's just talk about the physical location. And I know we have some people on the Zoom call that are not in Pueblo, but just to give you a sense of where we are in Southern Colorado and in Pueblo, Watertower Place is located in this very special part of Southern Colorado. And truly, the confluence of Fountain Creek and the Arkansas River is why we're all here, water. Water tends to be that one magical source of life that, people have been looking for. And of course, that's where the first settlements. But water can also bring with it the complete opposite of life. It can also bring destruction. And in fact, before I get to those pictures, I want to give you a better sense. These are some recent photographs taken by a drone, which I think will give us some really great context in terms of the scale of the project. These drone pilots actually were trying to break into Watertower Place some 5 years ago, and I happened to be on site, caught them, noticed that they had about 30 drones on their backpacks. And since then, I have been working with them, and 2 of them are now some of the most prolific professional drone pilots in Southern Colorado. So what turned out to be a raid on our property ended up becoming workforce development. So I love that notion of what we can do at Watertower Place. But I'll just show you just a brief part of this because it really does give you a great scale with I-25, of course, going north and south. And this is the new $80 million segment of I-25 that was just done by CDOT with our own exit. And I just wanted to have a series of these drone pilot shots that really offer just a sense of scale, because the project is 250,000 square feet. It's located between 3 railroad junctions. And now we've actually got some drone footage of just really close up and in some unique perspectives with Pikes Peak in the background. And I did not really notice the water tower so much until I got involved in the project. And now it doesn't matter where I am. I always seem to see those water towers from anywhere in town. So I love this drone footage because the Grove neighborhood, which is one of the oldest in Southern Colorado, really is one of those first settlement areas, primarily because of water. And the Grove is called the Grove because the trees that were found in the Grove provided ample shade. And of course, if you had shade, if you had water, if you had grasses for your animals, it was an ideal location to settle before venturing out into some of the other areas of Pueblo. But we'll be sharing, I've never shared these drone footages before, but it really does give you a sense of scale when you look at Water Tower Place. And I have to exit out with these videos, so just bear with me. So just to give you a little context from the last presentation, we talked about the confluence, Pueblo at the crossroads of discovery, embracing the creative economy, the 10 principles of reurbanism, the history of Water Tower Place, the rational factory, the tours and how we listen to the community, the arc of ideation, and some of our milestone celebrations. And what we talked about is, what is Water Tower Place? And it can be termed a vertical urban village where we are better together, clusters, shared resources, sustainability, the new rational factory, innovation, and a destination for ideas and wellness. And pretty much that is still at the core, really what we've been exploring. So again, why are we even here talking about this? And this gets back to the topic of water, the confluence of the Arkansas River and Fountain Creek. And I'm very pleased to say that on June 3rd, 2021 at 7 p.m., PBS will be airing a special 1-hour documentary on the Pueblo flood. It's the first time that PBS has dedicated 1 hour. We were able to raise about $125,000 to honor this special. The PBS is considering it the #1 event of historical significance for the state of Colorado in 2021. So we really wanted to follow in the path of the steel mill when the Steelworks Center of the West basically produced, Forging the West by Jim Havey Productions, which is a beautiful story and the first ever done that really talks about the story of the steel mill. This particular production will be, of course, the Knuckles Packing Company was at the epicenter of the flood. This picture clearly indicates, what happened as a result of the flood. But the building, because of its structural integrity and with no load-bearing walls, everything supported by the columns, the only damage that the building really sustained was this front section. For those of you that have visited Water Tower Place, this is the administration building, which is on the north portion of the property. And this is the Arkansas River right up in front. And for those of you that know your history, the Arkansas River was the international boundary to France, Spain, Mexico, and the Republic of Texas. So this truly was the crossroads. And the only reason that this portion of the building fell off is because boxcars were raging down the river and they hit the North Water Tower, knocked over the North Water Tower, ricocheted off, and the foundation was already being eroded, and that portion fell into the Arkansas River. This has been since rebuilt, and when you go into the Alpha Beta room, you can actually still see the crack where the building actually fell off into the Arkansas River. You'll also notice this big, huge stack. There's the flagpole in the center, and then to your right is this large stack. That stack is unique. There are only 4 in the world that were atop 4-story boilers by the Lasker Corporation out of Chicago, and that stack is no longer there. But one of our goals, we're in the middle of fundraising, but we want to rebuild that out of glass block. And it will be a beacon of hope for the next 100 years, because when the flood hit, this particular building was rebuilt. They got it up and running in less than 60 days. So the Knuckles family, the Red Cross, and the Elks Lodge all worked together because this building is so central to downtown. It was really used for the recovery effort of the city of Pueblo after the flood. So we're planning to rebuild that stack out of glass block. Hopefully this June 3rd, we're going to be illuminating and recreating that stack out of light. And we will project it exactly at the 100-year mark. So that's something we're looking forward to doing. But as part of that story, right as the flood hit, there was a 200-passenger Denver Rio Grande train that left the depot with passengers on it. Literally every car turned into like toy tin rail cars. Luckily, as far as we know, 46 people died in the Grove. Most of them were on the ground, but as far as the records are concerned, and this is something that we'll be sharing for the first time in the documentary, is all of them were rescued and taken to the upper levels of the meatpacking plant, and they stayed there for several days until the waters receded. But we just uncovered these amazing photographs. This is just one of many, but you can see the cars actually separated from the wheel chassis. So you can understand how powerful those floodwaters were right there at that time. I'm in the middle of doing a very special reading, which is very emotional and very heart-wrenching, but there was a private publication printed in 1925, several years after the flood, and it was written by then Chieftain city editor, and it is probably one of the most, it literally takes the flood story hour by hour, and you realize it was 3 floods all together. So I'm actually going to be reading that along with all of the photos, which will be part of the celebration. One of the images that we found is this next image, which has been colorized. If you look up in the upper right-hand corner, that's a car up on the 2nd and 3rd story of that building. And these are dead animals. Of course, the horses, it was just a lot of animals suffered great tragedy. But this is one of several images by Floyd that have been recolored. And some of them will be used in this forthcoming PBS documentary. So the flood really was one of those moments. I mean, of course, it's a natural disaster, but just like the pandemic and things that just almost come out of nowhere, it really does force humanity to kind of rethink, reimagine, and look at things that we're all talking about getting back to normal, but really what is normal? And, was everything great before? Was normal a good place to be? So it's an amazing process. So, but I'm really excited to see that this flood story will finally be given a real, celebration with an archival PBS documentary. I should also note on June 3rd, the same day, earlier in the day, you've probably been watching the Levee project. And the Levee mural, of course, is now ongoing, which is exciting. But that promenade is going to open to the public On June 3rd, it will be a special celebration for those to give honor to those that died during the flood. And there's a ceremony on June 4th, the following day, it will be open to the public. So we will be able to walk across the promenade right there, and the new pedestrian bridge will cross over to the other side. So you'll actually be able to take advantage of a lot of new infrastructure in the city. So again, it's amazing what happens 100 years later after that. So one thing that I'd like to remind everyone, and for those that I just find how a lot of the language that we use, this word confluence is really important because it is a place of meeting between indigenous tribes to a physical border between nations. And there's something that probably many of you are noticing, but this notion that, you know, all lands in the United States are native lands. And there is this discussion about native resurgence and really talking about, you know, the story of those lands. And we're seeing that with issues of systemic racism and talking about, you know, and looking at the actual origin story and moving it forward. But the confluence is also the boundary between mountains and plains. And it's also those everyday convergences of cultural and ethnic borders. Pueblo, of course, could not be a more poignant, you know, story to talk about cultural and ethnic borders, especially when you talk about why people came to Pueblo when they did as part of, you know, economic opportunity. The other thing that's really interesting about this is confluence as a marker. And this is used quite a bit. And you can see it both in cultures, ethnicities, landscapes, industries, religions, and identities. And one of the things that we did at Watertower Place that I think to this day was probably one of the best decisions that we ever made, and again, it gets back to this notion of listening, is here we have this massive building that has been, you know, in existence for more than 100 years, and generations of Puebloans, there's almost a 1 degree of separation between the building and Pueblo. I also think that Pueblo truly is a city of 1 degree of separation. I find that true almost everywhere I go, and I love that whole notion. I know I've worked with Jane Fraser many times talking about this notion through Pueblo Makes, where everyone, whether you're 5 or 95, seems to be tinkering in their garage, in their studio, in their workshop. It is a roll up your sleeves, kind of blue collar DIY, let's figure this out, let's get it done notion. So when we decided to listen, we decided to open the doors. And what happened was, I mean, I knew that they would be popular, but I had no idea that our tours would be received so well. So in the first 18 months before the pandemic, we had 4,800 people come through on our Saturday tours. And what started out as 30 or 40 people ended up being about 125 people a tour. And what was really wonderful is that 25 to 35% of those participants were not from Puebla when we did our final analysis. These were people coming from Denver, from Santa Fe, from Albuquerque, from Cheyenne, Wyoming. Because if you look at the 5-state region, people who worked in the industry, ranchers, you look at every aspect of meat packing, there were a lot of people that were in this industry. And in the early years, especially very early years, the Knuckles family was buying in 1920, $2 million worth of local livestock. And when I say local, that's the 5-state region. So these tours have really been very helpful, because when we get 125 people in our lobby, the first question I ask is, you know, who worked here before? And I always hope, I don't know who's there, but on most cases, we'll find 1 or 2 workers. And the one thing that we learned early on is that when we would talk to management, management would never tell us what happened behind the brick walls, but the workers would tell us everything that happened behind the brick walls. So we're actually in the middle of preparing for, we were going to be doing this last March, but we're doing an oral history project and we're going to be interviewing. I mean, we had one tour where two women hadn't seen each other in 40 years and they both thought they were both dead. And there they were in Watertower Place going on a tour. But if you think about it, many people, their workplace is where they socialize. And those are the people that they're with most of the time. So they had not seen each other since they stopped working. So the other thing is we don't really know to the depths of understanding really what life was like working in the plant. We can only imagine when we see the pictures or hear stories. And again, management has a completely different story than the workers themselves. So this oral history project, you'll be able to walk through the building and through large LED video screens, you'll be able to touch them and you'll hear the story in the voices of the workers, what it was like 25 years ago, 50 years. We have some 75 years ago. In fact, yesterday, it was my first in-person speaking engagement, and I spoke at the 68th annual Fremont County Cattle Women's Association luncheon. And even there, I had a woman, must have been about 95, came up to me after the presentation with her walker, and she says, "Gregory, I was listening so carefully, and about halfway through, I realized I was there. I brought my rabbits there 50 years ago, and my son brought his cattle." So again, you never know where you're going to be, where this story just really brings back some amazing memories of either really difficult, hard times, or for others, it was one of the best paying jobs. They paid in cash on Fridays. And college students or anyone that was unemployed could work up to 30 days without enrolling in the union. And then conveniently on Friday, on your 30th day, they would fire you and rehire you on Monday. So they had a wonderful system if they needed to keep people working. These are just a few more of the tours. I think Howie's on the call. I see Howie right there. But this building, of course, is all supported by these very elegant concrete columns. For those that love engineering, the load capacity of this building is 2,500 pounds per square inch, which is unheard of today. And so while it did take 1 year to build with a $300,000 budget, it would cost about $149 million to build it today. And you couldn't even build it today because most of the materials, many of them, just are not even available. And it is truly just a feat of engineering genius. This is the last rampway. So Hans-Peter Henschen, the architect, he used gravity as his main form of technological innovation. So the animals marched from the ground level all the way up to the 4th floor. This is the last rampway, and every level has corrals and watering troughs, but this was the last rampway up to the kill floor. You can see the unique design on the concrete floor. That was designed to allow the animals to have better traction before going through the chute and then out to the kill floor. Another thing that's been really powerful for the community and something that we've really enjoyed doing, something that I love doing. In fact, I was yelled at very loudly by CDOT when I shut down I-25 about 7 years ago. But when I was on the board of directors at the Steelworks Center, the steel mill, I wanted to light up the stacks because they hadn't been lit up since 1972. So we lit them up as a celebration as part of some exhibitions that I was curating. And we literally had about 1,200 people there that night. And people literally stopped on I-25 to look at the stacks. Here were stacks that weren't in use, but when you light them up, they do become sculptural. And when you see 4 generations of steelworkers in tears, you know that that is a big part of who those individuals are and what they really they want to reminisce. It's that nostalgic necessity that we have as human beings when we're reaching back and trying to go forward. This particular project, the illumination project, we haven't done it because of COVID since then, but we lit up the 5 chimneys, which are the smoking stacks. And we announced this in advance, and then we asked the community to actually photograph it from wherever they are and send us your photographs. And this was a photo by Justin Fahmy. And this was just one of those kind of magical photographs on a night when the sunset went down. So again, it's one of those projects that, like the tours, you know, it really just borrows from and uses what is right in front of us. And in our last presentation, we talked at great length about the National Trust for Historic Preservation and their 10 principles of reurbanism. And the one that I find the most important is that the greenest building is the building that's already standing there. And this is one of those perfect cases where we have an opportunity to really take advantage of it. So I find that Pueblo has this amazing tradition of exploration, discovery, and self-expression. And of course, when you live in a frontier area, a frontier town, literally on an international boundary, separated by water, with mountains, you know, everywhere around, clearly that's going to be something that is going to drive those first settlers. But self-expression is what I think Pueblo does so incredibly well. Whether you're tagging trains as a youth, whether you're into graffiti or murals, but there are so many different ways of self-expression. And one of the things that I do professionally, when I work with individuals, when I work with corporations, when I work with nonprofits, NGOs, foreign governments, when we talk about branding, the 3 questions that I always ask, and I ask them all the time, even when I'm not doing a branding project, is who am I? What do I have to say? And where am I going? And if you can honestly answer those 3 questions, I applaud you, because it is one of the hardest things to do, because it's always fluid too. You know, life throws so many things out at us, and sometimes we can't do what we want to do. So again, it gets back to, you know, what we talked at the very beginning, this notion of no. If you don't accept no, and it's a hard yes, you're going to be living in these questions and asking them over and over again until you really move to that place where you feel that you truly have a better sense of the future. I won't go into much detail, but for those that aren't familiar, there are 4 people that really, and we've learned so much since we actually started digging into their histories. But Emmett Knuckles, the founder, brilliant man, lost both parents at the age of 6. And his older brother, who was just a few years older, was given his guardianship. So basically we had toddlers, you know, they were basically riding and driving cattle in the 5 plain states. And Emmett Knuckles was on the very first cattle drive from Colorado, from Texas to Colorado, on the Goodnight Loving Trail. And on that ride, he literally said, and it's a very well documented ride, that he would someday own the world's largest, the most modern, the most efficient, the safest slaughter, meatpacking, and cold storage facility. Unfortunately, he never got to see the current building because he fell 3 stories from the old plant into one of the pens. He did not die from the fall, but the chieftain offered a 14-day vigil while he was in the hospital. And many people ask, well, why did the chieftain have a vigil for this particular man? Well, the year before, in 1909, he ran for mayor. He was a registered Republican, talked like a Democrat, one day got so fed up with politics, he called a parade and said he was independent. So in 1909, here's this brilliant frontiersman who really just touched the hearts and souls of the Pueblo community. And on his 14th day, when he did die, the chieftain headline said, "Death called." It was one of the biggest headlines that the newspaper ever had. So G.H. Knuckles, his son, is the individual who was responsible for reaching out to Hans Peter Henschen. But he died in 1928. And the board of directors immediately appointed Marion Knuckles and her older sister Della as president, vice president, and treasurer. The first time for women in the United States to be appointed C-level management jobs in a major food industry, which is truly incredible. Hans Peter Henschen, the Norwegian, and there was a mystery behind this gentleman when we first started researching his particular story. We could not find a picture of him. So I love our library. So the Pueblo City County Library, 3rd floor, special collections and genealogy are some of the best archivists, researchers, I think, in the United States, in the world, for that matter. Their collections are extraordinary. The vault contains some amazing documents that are so unique to this part of the country. But I work with Charlene Garcia Sims, who is one of the leads there. Now that we've lost Maria Tucker to the Santa Fe Library, she's now the lead of the director of the library there. Great job for her. But Charlene literally found through a back door his very first passport application. So this is his passport photo, which was in it was in the 1920s, and he actually included an emergency letter to expedite the passport because he needed to travel to the Republic of Panama to check out some of his lumber companies that he was on the board of directors. So though a very quiet, young, a very extraordinary man, the Pueblo plant was the first of 300 that he built around the world. So if you imagine 250,000 square feet, this monstrosity that we have in Pueblo, he built 300 of these around the world. And I have found his obituary in over 400 international papers. So he was truly the rock star of meatpacking plants. But he was also very much aligned with Henry Ford and the Rouge plant that was just starting to introduce the Model A. And I can announce we just acquired a Model A at Watertower Place that we're restoring as part of this story. But they were all students of the rational factory, this notion that people and processes could equal successful outcomes. And what Hans Peter Henschen did when we built the Pueblo plant is he actually partnered with the USDA and published what is now considered the Slaughterhouse Bible. So if you were to build a meatpacking plant, you would follow all of these guidelines, and you could then have US government inspectors on site, and they would actually stamp the meats US government inspected. So that was a game changer in the industry, and this is still being published today. So this notion of the rational factory, the design of it, is really extraordinary. This is actually one of the drawings of each floor and how each part of the animal would actually be handled in its process. And if you did march the animals up to the 4th floor, with there being upwards of 4,000 to 5,000 animals a day going through the factory, you really need to have a system that is very well organized. So this is how it's all cluster-based design. So all the operations were thoughtfully and intelligently organized. And what we've done is we've reorganized the rational factory using the same idea of clusters. But our clusters are the Pueblo Food Market, the Artist Zone, Lifestyle and Wellness, the Hans Peter Henschen Center for Creativity and Innovation, the Media Center, and Event Space. And what's happening with our 501c3 is that our board of directors really just represent village elders. So we have engineering, we have art, we have education, library, archives, manufacturing, wellness, lifestyle, food, business, politics, and historic preservation. So this has really helped us a great deal, especially with the tours, understanding how people respond to the building and how the building responds to people. And at its core, we realize that we are better together. And I think this was done in 2018. And I put it together after, listening and working. But what I find amazing is coming out of the pandemic, there could not be a more opportunistic and poignant time for us to be really thinking about resiliency, about sustainability, about shared resources, and adaptive reuse. So not only are we, and I need to check, but I think it may be out today, but Watertower Place is one of the featured projects in Colorado Biz Magazine talking about adaptive reuse. We are the largest project in Colorado. We're in the top 3 in the United States. So this whole notion of really adapting and reusing goes far beyond just the building. We design our own furniture. Everything we create, we try first and foremost to use materials that we have. Now, sometimes that can border on the extreme. We do have some hoarders, and we do have a lot of stuff that I don't see, but oftentimes it's amazing how certain things can be repurposed and reused. And I truly think we need to do more of that. So let's take a look at how the building has evolved since we did the first presentation. And I have new photographs and new things as of even today. But the first floor really is where the Pueblo Food Market, where we have offices, where we have designated makerspace. We have an entrepreneur who has taken over a huge section of the first floor, Johnny's Boiler Shop, and the lofts. So I'm going to take you through some of the spaces. One thing that we're really excited about and something that continues to evolve, we just had another round of meetings with CSUP, is really looking at how, and we made education a priority from day one. In fact, when Ryan McWilliams purchased the building 6 years ago, he also purchased Johnny's Boiler Shop, which is a beloved legacy steel fabrication manufacturing business that was really just kind of stagnant. And by bringing it into Watertower Place, he did it selfishly because we had no windows, no doors, no gas, water, electric. We had nothing. It was like a ship in dry dock. So having your own in-house fabrication capacity is huge. And we partnered with PCC and with the Department of Labor. So we do the welding certification programs at Watertower Place. When they bring the big, huge Department of Labor trailer around, we do that several times a year. So that was our first example of how we could truly bring education into every action that we do at Watertower Place. And if we're going to be a destination for ideas, that is truly one of those magical sweet spots and something that we really continue to strive towards. So CSUP, the Board of Governors meeting that we hosted at Watertower Place. For those of you that have been on the first floor, this was, you can see the racks system on the ceiling. This was the very last stop for the wholesale carcasses. So if you had a whole carcass, a half or a quarter, this was the final room. So you can imagine above the heads of all these guests would be meat carcasses hanging. And they would then go out to the loading dock, was immediately adjacent. But what I love is that these huge, massive spaces with no load-bearing walls offer really flexible, opportunities. If you're talking about industry, if you're talking about, events, if you're talking about just about everything that's necessary to pull off either a short, medium, or long-term endeavor, the building has always been designed with that kind of capacity. And I think that lends itself very well to Hans-Peter Henschen, Henry Ford, who really did look at the factory as an efficient machine. And it's something that we really don't think about, unfortunately. And we end up building these structures. And then when innovation or technology forces a change, oh, well, that's going to cost $200,000 just to take that wall down. Well, we don't have to worry about that at Watertower Place. Some more photos. Taking it to the other extreme, I hosted as part of Kadoya Gallery. Yumiko is a very famous textile designer who lives in Canyon City, and she's still hanging in there. When we did the show, we thought she was only going to have about a year left. Well, she's still going strong. She actually decided to sell all of her kimonos, and I partnered that with contemporary ceramics. These are Frank Nemec's amazing contemporary works. But again, this is the same room that we just saw. And it just goes to show how you can use these spaces in so many different ways. This is the same room. We hosted the first Food and Ag Summit, which was really the origin story of the Pueblo Food Project, and Walter Robb and Senator Bennett. So Walter Robb, founder of Whole Foods, and Senator Bennett have been really, I mean, they have been champions for really making this whole food accessibility, I mean, everything through the whole supply chain. Pueblo's always had the capacity, but it never had the thought leadership. It never had really an opportunity to take this to the next level. And we were finding that we have the St. Charles Mesa with some amazing generational farms that luckily, because most industrial cities push the agrarian side society away and move towards industrialization, and they lost a lot of those lands. We're very fortunate that they're parallel. We still have them. So this is actually, if you know Gagliano's, this is actually Vince of Gagliano's, fourth generation. And this was the pitch event where individuals came and presented their ideas. And Vince got up and said, I need $40,000 to buy a truck. My wife likes expensive things and I need to do more business. And then you had other people that were, you know, across the whole spectrum. But it was so wonderful to see a fourth generation Puebloan. And shortly after this event, he actually did enter into several agreements, and his sausages now, which are world known, are now distributed all throughout quite a few retail establishments. So yet again, this is the same room, but it does show just really where capacity is. Second floor, which is a mix of co-working space, the media center, offices on demand, art gallery. The third floor, which has a wide variety of artist, restaurant, urban gardens. We have real estate, financial services. We're actually planning to put an Olympic-sized swimming pool on top of Johnny's boiler shop because of the load capacity that we have. So here are some things that have been happening. For those of you that are familiar with light painting, I knew what light painting was, but boy, when I got to see it firsthand, I really appreciated how art and technology really just work magic. So light painting is where a camera in time lapse, actually the model is stationary, so has to stand there in the same position. And then an artist actually paints with light behind or around. So this was probably about a 20-second, 30-second exposure. And it's really extraordinary. What I found even more amazing is the fact that they're using voice-activated commands. So the photographer and the light painter can be the same person. So the artist can be doing the painting and talking to the camera and telling it what to do through voice activation, because it usually takes two people, one to do the camera, one to do the art. Here is another one many of you have probably seen before. This is me, and these are 7 Roman candles being shot off. I almost thought I was going to get hit by one of them. But here again, this was a one take, no Photoshop. This happened, it was about 30-second exposure. And it's amazing what we can do with these spaces. And to be honest, I'm really trying to find one or two spaces that we can leave that are absolutely raw, so that we can continue to do some of these fun things. So let's take you up. Oh, I forgot about this. Is a wonderful perspective. So in between the second and the third floor, this is our designated urban garden. So our restaurants will be using this. We have partnered with CSU Extension, the horticulture department, and we're going to be doing master gardening. So we've partnered with PSAS Fulton Heights to really bring this whole Watertower place to be, with rooftop gardens, a laboratory, so that people can come and learn and then take those skill sets home with them. So we also partnered with PDI, because PDI already has above ground box gardening, and these are all going to be used in conjunction. And we're getting ready now for spring. We're working on several of those platforms. But again, you know, COVID has given us, you know, a year of breathing, a year of reimagining, a year of really rethinking the processes and the steps that we feel are necessary. So the fourth floor, which was the kill floor, is really designed now for meetings, special events, large groups. So just to give you an idea, we had a wonderful group of female Russian filmmakers wanted to come to Pueblo to meet with the Pueblo Regional Film Commission. And so we all met. We had a wonderful time. And of course, everyone wants to go to the fourth floor to really take advantage of that particular space. The other things that we've done up on the fourth floor, this is the potluck dinner that we did with the Holistic Health Alliance. Pueblo is the first chapter. The Holistic Health Alliance was started in Boston, in Massachusetts. Pueblo formed the first chapter outside of Massachusetts, and Rachel Kutskill of Fit Instincts is the founder of the Colorado chapter. And we're really happy to announce that at Watertower Place, we will be hosting and have the first Holistic Health Alliance clinic with 40 to 50 practitioners. So we're really excited about that. And the notion that, again, it doesn't have to be extensive brick and mortar clinic because of the way basically practitioners operate. Most of them have their own offices, their own studios, but they can come and use Watertower Place as a place to provide services, either on rotation, however we decide to do that. We're kind of evaluating all of those different opportunities. This is aerial acrobatics. So when you decide in the future for your luncheon that you'd like to have acrobats dangling over you when you serve lunch, you can tick the box, and we are putting in permanent rigging. We have 3 aerial acrobatic troops. So it's now workforce development. So we'll be able to give our performing artists an opportunity to make a living just by doing what they love to do. And this was one of the photo shoots that we had for them. The other is weddings. This was the very first wedding that we did over a year ago, 300 people on the roof of Watertower Place. Since then, I've had 85 requests for weddings. Unfortunately, we have not been able to do one since then, but just the location fee, the venue fee for a wedding in Denver on average is $10,000 just for the location. And it's become so, one, very expensive, but you can't even book them. They're booked up solid. So ours is $2,500. So not only is there a competitive advantage, but we're finding that couples really can bring their whole family and they can make it an experience. They can pay for hotels, they can pay for food. When you don't have to spend $10,000 just for the venue fee, you can do quite a bit. So we had 300 people attend this wedding, And then we had dinner in the beef cooler. And this was the wedding couple up against, of course, some of our great murals that we have inside. So the groom actually was the lead electrician who did the pre-work for our elevators. And the bride is from a very well-known ranching family. So of course, an old meatpacking plant was exactly what they wanted. And a year ago, since then, I can report that they have a new baby. So that Watertower place was a great place for them to start. So I wanted to talk about, before I go any further, because this is a really fun section that evolved as of this morning, very auspiciously, but I see that there are some things flashing. Do we have any questions? Does anyone have any questions before we continue? If we don't, I will talk about opportunity. Do I hear someone? Is someone?
Well, Kelly had made some interesting comments earlier.
Yeah.
The challenge, what was it, Kelly, that you called it? The Living Building Challenge?
Yeah, the Living Building Challenge that is part of the global movement for buildings to regenerate their own environmental and social value, like actually
Yes.
food, water, air,
Right.
and then the education and the community benefit pieces too.
So and I think what we're trying to do too is, if we're creating a vertical urban village, what do you need to have a sustainable, a healthy, and the other thing that we're starting to use is the happy index. A lot of nations now are starting to use the happy index instead of using these traditional, gross national product figures, which tend to very much eschew the conversation in an old school way. And so for us, it really is that notion of balancing, mind, body, spirit, and soul. And if the pandemic pointed out anything, it pointed out all of the inequities, all of the disenfranchisement, all of the systemic this and that. I mean, there were so many things that I think we all on one level or another realized that we needed to do some hard work, but we always thought that there would be an opportunity down the road to actually deal with some of these issues. And when they do become systemic, that's where all the hard conversations need to happen. That's where all the hard work needs to happen. And it really does take a global incident that has impacted every single living human being on the planet, to wake us up and to reimagine. And I just say, if you are in the conversation of change, or if you're in the conversation of reimagining a future, there could not be a better time for that. So this notion of opportunity, I always see the world half full. The glass is always half full. It's never half empty. So when no is a hard yes, opportunity comes in good times and bad. And sometimes that's a hard thing to see, because we oftentimes get caught up in a lot of the emotional triggers that really are front and center. And it may not be our emotional triggers, but we all have support systems. And if we're caring for someone, or if there's a cousin or a parent, that becomes part of our immediacy. And oftentimes that particular, it's not really noise in any judgmental way, but it does create, an environment where oftentimes we don't see opportunity as clearly as we might want to. But basically a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. So I woke up really early this morning, and this always happens when I do presentations, because I want them to be really organic and synergistic, and I want them to be applicable, especially to the audience that I'm talking to. And after having done the presentation yesterday, which was very different, but I woke up this morning and I was looking for opportunity. And for some reason, I was looking at the Chieftain, and I don't know if this new digital section, I have a lot of things about the Chieftain that I don't like in terms of where it has been going. I have some good news to report about what we're doing as far as relaunching the Pueblo Star Journal evening paper, which will be launching with an inaugural edition with the June 3rd flood edition. And it will be a hyper-local nonprofit newspaper that everyone will receive in their mailbox every Thursday. So we're really excited about that. But I was on the Chieftain site, and what I found aligned exactly what we're doing at Watertower Place. So we're all kind of in this shared reality, and we're in the beginning of the end, hopefully. And what we started before the pandemic was something that really resonated, and something that when you start talking about, actually creating a village, you start talking about what is necessary to have a resilient, a sustainable, a happy, well-balanced community. And having done about 2 years of events and meetings and, listening to the community, we started to get all these questions. Do you know a good plumber? Do you know a good makeup artist? Do you know a good set designer? Do you know a good videographer? Do you know a good photographer? Well, there are a lot of them, but there's a lot more. And I am continually amazed at the depth of the talent that we have in Southern Colorado. And oftentimes you have to pick up a lot of rocks to find this talent, because sometimes the individuals themselves don't realize the capacity, nor do they realize where the marketplace is for their talents. So what we have started at Watertower Place, and this is just a screenshot, it's not live yet. We're actually in the middle of the project. But basically the second paragraph says, we are asked almost daily about referrals for the best photographers, caterers, plumbers, wellness providers, and so many others. This portfolio is specially curated by our in-house meeting and events team at Watertower Place, and designed to help you find just the right person or business for your next project. We have established this directory so that you can contact the vendors directly. If you are planning an event at Watertower Place, these are some of the top providers in Pueblo and all of Southern Colorado. Once we discuss your special event, we will review the options and put together the perfect team to execute every detail of your plan. So I have just a real sample. It's photography and videography were the first that we started. And these are just 4. I have, dozens more. So really, it's an opportunity if we're going to be creating community, if we're going to really be better together, and we need to have this expertise. This is our way, and especially during the pandemic where we haven't been able to get together. It's really difficult. So this way, when someone says, do you know a photographer? Well, yes. Do you want traditional? Do you want goth? Do you want, there's so many different styles. And so for us to be able to show the diversity of talent, it really is a great, it's an interesting workforce development project that we're actually engaged in. So another part of this is we looked at our YouTube channel. So I find that storytelling is anchored in just about everything that we do. And in order for, anyone to really, I think, feel good, be impactful, and for it to be authentic and genuine, you really have to dial in on the story itself. I'm always looking for the story behind the story, because I find that to be even more rooted in authenticity. And so we looked at YouTube, and if you look at a lot of the digital platforms, especially for individuals, for organizations, in fact, I'm working with Dr. Kelly right now on her brand. We're about to launch her new website for a perpetual harvest. And it's really exciting because, if you think you know the person, and then all of a sudden you're tasked with this digital project, how can we create Dr. Kelly as a brand? And I think it's forced Dr. Kelly, it's forced me to really ask some of the hard questions. So basically, one thing that I love about YouTube is, videos are very impactful, especially a 2-minute, no more than 2 minutes, you can do so much to really reinforce your brand. But on our new page, if you look here below the video that we're highlighting, it says sharing the stories of Pueblo. We went through and we identified about 40 channels on YouTube. So I don't have to create this content, but I want to offer to people that are on our site to realize that there's all these great storytellers out there. So this is just there are 40 if you click through, but I have the gallery, Project Inspire, Holistic Health Alliance, Colorado State University, PCC, Skill, and they go on and on. So again, you don't have to recreate the wheel. And I just wanted people to realize where some of the great stories are in our community. So next, I repeat this slide because I really feel that these are some of the very important questions to ask. Again, when you're living in a community that is so rooted in exploration, discovery, and self-expression, we ask these questions: who am I? What do I have to say? And where am I going? So here's what came to my world this morning. And I just want to share some of these with you because I was literally kind of blown away, because sometimes it's hard to find good stories about Pueblo. And Pueblo, I must admit, has been its worst known storyteller. And now it's wonderful that we have so many storytellers. So I was on the digital platform for the Chieftain, and literally all these were in this morning, all of them. And I'm just going to go through them kind of quickly, but I'm going to recircle back because here's 21 Steak works to best COVID's impact. Locally grown produce, like Pueblo's famed chilies, give 21 Steak dishes local fare and flavorful touches. That's a powerful sentence. Look at the next one. Culver's brings 50 to 60 new jobs to Pueblo. From the buttery toasted bun of the butter burger to addictive cheese curds and sweet frozen custard, Pueblo gears up for full Culver's experience. Senate Bar owes pandemic resilience to locals. From its signature wings to Gagliano's sausage sandwich. We just talked about Vince at Gagliano's. The Senate Bar and Grill keeps Puebloans fed despite pandemic. JoJo's Sriracha showcases Pueblo chili flavor. Made in Pueblo with Pueblo chili, JoJo's Sriracha is a spicy condiment that is uniquely Pueblo. And if you haven't tried it, it's pretty remarkable. Papa Jose's. Pandemic relief helped a lot. Papa Jose Union Cafe continues tradition of no skimpy tacos, and with a little government boost, stays in business despite coronavirus pandemic. I don't talk about the mall very often, but Pueblo Mall Shop Now program helps rebound. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, 2 new Pueblo Mall programs provide an opportunity for national and local tenants. And that's really important. National and local tenants to not only survive, but thrive. And this is the Osaka Poke and Ramen kiosk that they have. Now I find some really interesting things. We have an issue with our renewable energy and with energy sources. So Vestas lays off, affects 15% of the Pueblo Tower plant staff. This story I still don't understand, and I need to do some more research. But apparently they're reducing the workforce by 15% due to projected lower demand for wind turbines. After what happened in Texas, and they have quite a few wind turbines, I would think that we would see more. Now, Black Hills Energy, they're telling us to be frugal. And that's not unusual for Black Hills and their history. It's interesting. But then the chamber honors the entire tireless police force. Again, from pandemic pressures to passionate protests, Pueblo police kept the peace and reduced the overall crime rate by 4%. Are you seeing a trend here? Public offered final chance to comment on Union Avenue. So Union Avenue and Main Street could soon receive major renovations. A meeting was held Wednesday to hear public input for the final time. I never knew we had an axe throwing business, but we do. So axe throwing business stays on target through the pandemic. Pueblo Jack's Axe Throwing was the first mobile axe throwing business. But with most events canceled in 2020, owner Brian Rosemeneth had to branch out. I need to learn more about a mobile axe. Indie Dwell, this is really exciting, and we've been reading about this, hopes to add 100 jobs by year's end. A sobriety center in La Junta and Neighbor Works of Southern Colorado in Pueblo soon will be the beneficiaries of Indie Dwell's first Colorado-based homes. This goes on and on. Pregnancy Center unveils women's medical clinic. Pueblo County opens applications for $6 million of economic recovery. And the last one, One Pueblo, which is a program, unveils economic recovery plan. Some of the best and brightest days are ahead for our community as Pueblo rebounds from the coronavirus pandemic. So those slides really woke me up this morning because I was thinking about the pandemic. I was thinking about being better together. I was thinking about creating community, the preferred vendor collection. All of these things are existing infrastructure, things that we currently have. One thing that I didn't talk about, which I'm very proud about, and now the Biden administration and Governor Polis are using as an open source document. In November, Pueblo was facing a really difficult situation with essential workers and first responders in that they had a false choice, and parents were having to decide whether they were going to stay home to do childcare or whether, they had the resources to do it. So we actually created what is known as fair care. And we put almost 300 children back into classrooms, 2 locations in Pueblo, cohorts of 5. These were all the children of first responders and essential workers. We did that from November until January. The city gave us $125,000. It cost $11.50 per child per day. It was an extraordinary program using existing resources. And what was great is most of the money, almost all of the money, went to the substitute teachers. It was all workforce development. So we didn't have to recreate, rebuild. We actually were fortunate. Kids were at home and remote learning. We brought kids back into the classroom, but managed it through cohorts of 5. And the best part was if kids were, say, one family had a first grader, a third grader, and a fifth grader, we kept them in the same cohort of 5 because they were working one-on-one with their own substitute teacher. So again, I didn't bring that up in the presentation, but lastly, this last part really is about how you can learn more. This is Watertower Place, our magazine, our floor plans, and then one thing that you can do, I work with Google in the very, very, very early years. Now all that I do with them is I do voice action. I do code development for voice actions. If you have a Google Assistant, all you need to do is say, talk to Watertower Place, and you will be taken back to the 1970s. It's a quiz show, and you will be asked multiple choice questions about the 100-year history of Watertower Place. When I do the tours, you have to get 5 out of 7 right, or you can't leave the building. So it's one of my ways to get people really engaged. And a new program that we're starting is the Pueblo Youth Docent Training and Certification Program. And we're going to be doing edition number 2 of this particular game. So there will be an added section. And lastly, I would like to leave you with a very short song that was sung by Ainea Lujan of the Haunted Wind Chimes. He's on top of Watertower Place singing, I Wanna Love You. There we go.
Thank you, Gregory. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That was fun. Thanks for your patience.
That was beautiful, beautiful, overwhelming, inspiring, the whole works. Yeah. So do you have time for a few
Oh,
questions?
of course. You have me captive, so I'm
Okay.
not going anywhere.
Oh, excellent. So if you want to comment or ask a question, all you need to do is unmute.
Kelly had a question earlier. Kelly, do you remember your question about the how many venues or vendors?
Yes, there was the videography media area shown, and I was curious how many types of workforce, job training, or other pieces were in that scale of the puzzle.
So it's pretty comprehensive. So if you think about a village, what makes a village work well? Literally, it's everything from legal to makeup artists to catering to anything you need to create something. I mean, it's extensive. So that's going to be exciting for us. And there will be, I'm hoping the week after next, the requests will go out to add more. So because the more we put the word out, the more we learn, and we want to hear from people, because that's what I found. I've just been going around lifting up rocks all over, and I'm finding these amazing, individuals and organizations with talent that are either not marketing, or many don't need to market, but we don't need to call someone from Denver. We don't need to call someone from out of state. We have the resources. I think we just need to be better at sharing those stories and matching the need, the supply and the demand. We just need to be smart about that.
That reminds me of a presentation I saw in this group maybe a year ago from Walsenburg, the bus group, and how they were doing something with the radical vision around sustainable community development, but they weren't as grounded in economic or historical value. So it maybe didn't take off with the same momentum or capacity for that exponential growth. When I saw the subscriber numbers on some of the new YouTube channels, it gave me hope that we're all at the beginning of this J curve.
Without a doubt. And that's the beauty of being authentic and genuine, because consumers pretty much are some of the savviest when they're dialing in on what their needs are. If you're not authentic and genuine, most often you're not going to see that kind of engagement. So that's what's fun, is really, it's a hard process, but when you do that hard work and you dial in, who am I? What do I have to say? And where am I going? You ask those 3 questions, you're going to find other people on the other end understanding exactly where you can meet.
Right, and they had this similar beautiful why of how do we meet the most basic human needs, right? And I think that this project has a lot of potential to meet a lot of different kinds of people right where they are and help them have their own rebirth.
Right. And one of our goals at Watertower Place is, you know, we have the unique position of having wow factor. So we realize this just doing the tours. So our goal is that you come to Watertower Place. There's an educational component to everything that we do. Now, if you're coming just to have a margarita, that's wonderful. We're going to do some fun things when you drink a margarita, but we want you to go home to your school, to your home, to your place of business, to wherever, your cul-de-sac, and share what you've learned. So it really is an extension. So if we are this kind of laboratory for humanity, we'd love it for people to come experience Pueblo in a very unique way and then take that home. Because there is something about there's something about the community that is not only diverse, but it's rooted in, you know, hardworking, blue collar, roll up your sleeves, DIY. I mean, that's about as authentic and genuine as you can get. And Pueblo has found some very interesting solutions too with that diversity during Prohibition. When all of a sudden Colorado went dry 4 years before the nation, everyone went underground. And there were a lot of factors as to why, but culturally, you know, people will do, if you tell a blue collar workforce that they can't have a beer after work, well, they'll find a way to have a beer after work.
Gregory, I have a question. I know
Sure.
in some of your visioning, you were hoping to use location being close to the Riverwalk to work Watertower Place into that, to have access to create some really nice connections there. How is that vision going? Is that still there for you?
Yes. So again, the first thing that we look to is existing infrastructure. So we have 2 tunnels that were built in the 1880s, 12 by 12 tunnels that go underneath the Missouri Pacific lines and connect to Gateway Park. We're reopening those hopefully next year. So you'll be able to walk from Brews to Watertower Place through tunnel in 5 minutes. So in terms of the physical connectivity, that is also being extended. The new Levee Promenade, now you'll be able to walk straight along the promenade and walk right into the Grove. So you'll be able to do a complete loop now, which was completely impossible because of the rail structure. Because rail tracks, though they're really great for transportation, they can sometimes be, you know, very bifurcating in terms of how the community, I mean, you live on the other side of the tracks. I mean, just that notion tells you exactly how people respond to those type of lines. So not only are we physically trying to connect, but also in terms of our relationships, we're connecting with all the organizations, partnerships, and businesses along those lines too.
Excellent, thank you. So as I was watching today, I was excited about maybe the possibility that tours will be coming up again. What do you think?
So the public tours that people sign up for, we're not going to start until September, but I do tours, I do about 10 a week now. So for groups, you bring me your tribe, I will make it happen. So like we did last March, we had literally, it was right at the beginning. I was so looking forward to that. We can definitely, you know, make that possible. I'm doing that right now.
Great, thank you.
And I did want to mention one other thing. Carol Fortino is on our call, and we just published Carol's new book. And it's hard for you to see because of the way I will stand here with it on my chest. This is Carol's new book called Haying in the Moonlight. And it is one of the most extraordinary books. It's dealing with a very hard topic, suicide. But each chapter is a different story, and it ends with a very hopeful community-based self-healing solution. This literally just released, and I'm very excited, very proud to have Carol on the call, but a great book. And I'm hoping maybe in the future, when you look for speakers or maybe a reading, it might be something to consider because it is rooted in community and it is rooted in all of those hard conversations that we really need to have more conversations, especially coming out of this pandemic, just looking at where we are in terms of mental health. But it's a beautiful book. So I'm excited that I was able to help Carol share that story.
Yes, that is exciting. And thank you, Carol, and thank you, Gregory. What is the name of the book again?
It's Haying, Haying, Haying in the Moonlight. And a lot of it, but many of the stories are rooted in rural America with farmers, multi-generational, and that's a very, very serious problem, suicide in many of those communities. So, but I love the cultural side of it. A Japanese woman, she has quite a few different perspectives. You know, Native American reservations. I mean, it really does cover and ends in a very hopeful, which is really exciting. And she's got a great resource section, and she has questions for consideration when you are actually using the book as a resource. So that's a little selfish plug, but it's a great resource, a great book, and I'm excited that it's going out into the world.
So Dr. Kelly has a book out, Carol Fertino has a book out, Meryl Sarper has a book out. Isn't it wonderful? So much creativity and sharing of one's wisdom and stories. We are very grateful for that. So I think our time is up. Is there any more urgent questions? Are we complete for now?
If anyone would like the presentation, I can make it available, but you're going to also make it available on YouTube. But if anyone wants the actual presentation, I'm more than happy to make that available.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, so that's a reminder. This is recorded today and it will be available on our website. Go to consciouslivinganddying.org and click on the community page, Conscious Community page, and it will show up there within a week or two, probably, when Ina gets it put together. So you will be able to share it with your friends and family. Yeah. Okay, well, this has been lovely. I think we need to complete. It's a little after 3. We thank all of you for coming. Thank you very, very much. And do let us know if you want to be a speaker or you have someone you know who would be a good person to share their story with. Just let us know. We would love to hear. Blessings, everyone. Thanks again to Gregory.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yes.
Great job.
Very happy to see you. Very happy to see you all again. Take good care.
Thank you.
To see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.